Well, folks, it turned out the rumours are true. Eddie Jones sacked from his England role less than a year out from a Rugby World Cup. We're going to go through the news. What's his recent record? What are the parallels of 2018? Some stats, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. Obviously, there's been a lot being made of Eddie Jones's overall England record. I think it was like 73%. I think 59 out of 81, which is a pretty bloody good record. And I think, is it the best England coach of all time? Obviously, what have you done for me lately is certainly very much a kind of sporting theme, but overall, he leaves England with a very good record. But what is that overall recent record? Well, it's not the best reading in 2022. The Six Nations, 2 wins, 3 losses, losing to Ireland and France, who are the number 1 and 2 sides in the world, plus a loss against Scotland, which I think overall, for head-to-head records, Eddie didn't do that well against the Scots. So, disappointing Six Nations campaign. Bounces back with a series win over in Australia, 2-1. Loses the first one and then comes back to win the series. And then it's really this kind of home series where they only win the one game against Japan, which is maybe the straw that broke the camel's back. Lose to Argentina, lose to South Africa, and were generally quite poor against New Zealand, barring a really spirited 10-minute comeback where they managed to draw the game. So 5 wins, a draw, and 6 losses. There's a Barbars game in there as well, but we're just looking at the tests. It's a below the 50% record, but only just. The squad, if we're looking at some of the stats, was a relatively young squad. Eddie's talked a lot about things being in a 3-year cycle, and whether you buy into Eddie's lines about how he's building for the World Cup is kind of, it's going to depend on person to person. Some people think he's full of hot air. Other people think he's genuinely got that kind of long-term plan where he's looking to get all his ducks in a row for peaking at the World Cup, and everything else is kind of secondary. Well, if that was the case, this shows you that the matches between the Rugby World Cups can't just be relegated to being secondary, because the fans generally won't take it. They want to see their team successful as much as they can, not just at a World Cup. But like I said, the young squad, I think only the Italians and the French were fielding a younger squad than England of all the Tier 1 teams this year. England's line-out was all right this year, not phenomenal, but not great. The scrum had some issues. Certainly, that was an area that they weren't getting that right. Defensively, not that flash. Tackling percentage, I think, was only above Japan, which is generally not a great place to be. But it wasn't all bad news. Like 2021, England's penalty count was horrendous. They brought that down from like 13 penalties a game, which is kind of where the Aussies are at the moment, to 10, which is kind of respectable. They did concede a fair few more tries this year. Scored a similar amount. But yeah, it's a weird one, because like I said, he was Marcus Smith was introduced into the side and becoming a regular. Freddie Stewart's becoming a regular. Jack Van Poortvliet's becoming a regular. So very much a side kind of, I guess, transitioning, but maybe not fast enough for the RFU. I mentioned 2018 because it's kind of eerily similar. It's a year out from a World Cup, and England don't have a great time. Like I mentioned, this year, Eddie was 5 wins, a draw, and 6 losses, so just under 50%. In 2018, it was like 6 wins, 6 losses. So just turned that draw into a win, and it's pretty much the same season he had in 2018. In the Six Nations, they likewise go 2 from 5. They lose to Scotland, France, and Ireland, so that's eerily similar. They go on tour to South Africa, but instead of winning it, they lose that tour. So that's kind of reversal of what we had in Australia this year. And then in the home series, they do a bit better, though. They win against South Africa, they win against Japan, they win against Australia. They lose by 1 point against New Zealand. So I guess a difference there is they kind of seem to be kind of peaking at the right time. But it was certainly a really rough start to the year for England. Whereas maybe this year, the rough finish is the major difference maker. But in terms of the overall record, not all that different. And then the very next year, England gets his side to a Rugby World Cup final. So, yeah, it's just it's a kind of interesting parallel. Steve Borthwick is apparently stepping in for the moment, and he is certainly the favourite to be the replacement for Eddie Jones. I know there's been a lot of talk about Scott Robertson potentially stepping up from New Zealand, but it'd be a big ask for him to come across and take over the reins at such short notice. So I think Borthwick is far and away the favourite. He knows the England camp. He's been there not too long ago. His work with Leicester's been phenomenal recently. So yeah, you got to wonder whether there's things going on in the background, because Eddie Jones has had a lot of coaching turnover, like in the back room. Yeah, a lot of coaches have kind of left, and there's also a parallel situation with what happened with the All Blacks this year. They had a horrendous run as well, and Ian Foster was also on the chopping block. But I was talking to Tony from Distracted Sports, which is another sports YouTube channel, and he basically said, remember when Ian Foster was about to get the chop, and several of the high-profile All Blacks guys came out like on social media basically saying they stand by their coach? Haven't really seen that. I don't see any England players, sticking up for Eddie to keep his job. Maybe they knew the writing was on the wall. Maybe they don't fancy Eddie. He's known for playing his mind games. So, yeah, it is an interesting one. It's all drama with Wales and now England. We will see what happens. You guys let us know your thoughts. If you want to get some England rugby gear, check out England Rugby Store. They can use some of that money to pay Eddie's contract out, I suppose, because there's supposedly no money. But they found the money to pay England coach Eddie Jones out of his contract, and yeah, it's crazy. How do you reckon England's going to go at the World Cup, folks? Do you think this is a great move? Do you think it's bizarre timing? I found it initially a bit bizarre, just because, as I said, Eddie's gone into a World Cup campaign not that fancied and turned it around literally one cycle ago. Different from Pivac, where it was genuinely quite doom and gloom, and a lot of the team numbers were looking horrendous. England aren't looking that bad, but I got to admit, the end of the year didn't go all that flash. But anyway, you guys let us know your thoughts, and yeah, England Rugby Store down in the description if you want gear. Take care, folks. Talk to you again soon. See you later.